Is there a sense that that will be a priority or not? I don't know if
I'll let the group talk. Does anybody have any strong feelings on this?
Low budget.
I think it is. Well, I think also these will need to be replaceable because they will get damaged and or stolen and or just thinking about the maintenance of them if they are super expensive. Just how will we get them? You know, we use fast signs sometimes just to get our mile markers reprinted if needed. So just thinking about if maintenance occurs, what does that look like?
All right.
I have a question regarding what are the options with respect to environmentally friendly or low impact?
For one thing, we could use recycled materials. I don't know if in all designs or all of design, but in parts, for example, on the posts. We could use natural materials like wood. It has a counterpart that is very high maintenance because it needs to be replaced or repainted. We can use, like I said, recycled materials or recyclable materials. So if a part breaks and needs to be replaced, that part that is removed can be recycled. So it all depends on if there's a big emphasis on trying to be green, so to speak, or if it's one more element to be considered. So that's why I wanted to bring it up, because sometimes it is a concern and sometimes it's not. But yeah, we use recycled materials on a sign for in Charlottesville, and they are very resilient and they have limited colors and the look may not be as sharp. So that's why it depends on what's the priority. But we can keep discussing this, and if you have any thoughts, you can share them, and we can look for those types of materials.
So can I interrupt real quick? This is Barb. Since a lot of the trail is going to be maintained by VDOT, I would think that we would need to try to use materials that VDOT is comfortable with. And going back to the whole idea of what will Dominion allow, we need to have that same conversation with VDOT about what VDOT will allow.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of weird, like outdoor advertising in a VDOT right of way. I know what that is for roadways. I'm assuming it's the same kind of thing for trails, but Kat mentioned also the permit, having to get a VDOT permit for signage. So anyway, trying to get that kind of ironed out will be good if we do that up front.
All right. Yes, so that was the next question in terms of maintenance, if there are any funds, particular funds for maintenance, or if that's something that we need to be considered. The other thing that was partially answered is how is design fabrication funded? So I guess it's progressive. I mean, there's a need for a finished section, so there's funding for that, and as time goes by, it gets funded in different chunks, so to speak. Regarding the timeline, the next point, we discussed a little bit about the timeline. The August timeline is really tight. I don't know what's the approval process. That was one of my questions. What's the approval process for the design? If it's going to be by a person, a point of contact, or if it has to be submitted to the whole group. because that completely affects the timeline. So
this is Chet. I mean, I think ultimately it would be as long as everybody that's on this call, including VDOT and you know, the design passes muster with the technical advisory committee ultimately. It would be, since this is a CVTA funded plan, I think CVTA will be the ultimate approval for this, at least for the plan itself. And that date would be September 29th for the official sign off. And then it would have to obviously go through each locality as well. But I think that will be after the fact, once the plan is completed. But I'm certainly open to other ideas and comments, and Dorena may want to be talking about this one.
Yep. Thanks, Chet. Yeah, the city of Richmond, we of course have our design committee that would have to review it. So I would probably just say, along with like the VDOT and Dominion, that our UDA, our design group, is like in on the design, so that the areas of Richmond that may have it are already in line or going to be allowed in the areas that we're assuming.
all right.
Yeah, and I think I mean this is Chet one more time, and I think Mark from VDOT has something to say too. But I think that's part of the onus for getting the various city and county committees involved lies on the people on the committee. So I think, Gladys, it's important to know like when you need decisions made so that we can work as quickly as possible to bring those ideas back.
I think somebody has their hand up.
Yeah, Mark.
Yep, real quick, appreciate that. Certainly VDOT's review of any wayfinding proposals, we would certainly work to make sure that the right folks were reviewing that proposal here, so that any future permits and the process for reviewing those permits could be made easier, streamlined, and made that much quicker. But similar to working with Dominion or the city of Richmond or other areas like that, there will be a separate review process for any kind of permit related work. The opportunity we have here is to certainly make that a lot easier with a plan that people have already seen and looked at.
Yes, that makes sense.
Can I ask a quick question? This is Barb. So Mark, thinking about, for example, the southern section, you know, signage, I would think is part of the trail, you know, just like roadway signage is part of the roadway. So will you guys be able to incorporate whatever this wayfinding plan comes up with in those projects?
Barb, we can certainly take a look at that. I think the intent early on was that the construction and maintenance of the trail, the physical trail itself, was part of what would be included in the projects and what would be under the maintenance expectations. We can certainly review that and ask that question again. That I understand what you're asking. I think that the wayfinding was not anticipated to be part of kind of the maintenance responsibility. But again, we can double check and revisit that question again.
Okay, that sounds good. Thanks.
Yep.
This is Liz. I was going to add to that. Mark's right. The one caveat to that is like where there's an obvious turn in the trail or a crossing or something like that, we would provide the very basic directional signage, but nothing beyond that.
Yep.
It seems
a good
like
opportunity in the wayfinding plan will be to make sure that the wayfinding plan is very clear in what parts would be maintained. Say, for instance, on the sections of the trail that are maintained by VDOT, and which would be expected to be covered under separate maintenance.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's
it
an
seems like
opportunity through
it
this to
seems
get
like
that
a great-
clarified.
It seems like a great conversation to have with the new Trails office.
100%. Absolutely.
Okay.
All right. So let's see. In terms of the next point, which is data collection, we would like, if possible, to have any logotypes, seals, graphic elements that will need to be considered for the signage. If we can receive those in a vector-based format, either EPS or AI, so that basically no JPEGs or PNGs or any format that is low resolution. It has to be something that we can enlarge, manipulate, and use for artwork whenever it needs to go to manufacturing. Also,
Hey, Gladys,
yes.
this is Chet. I wanted to recognize Phil. I mean, you sent us this list a little bit ago, and Phil has already done a lot of the work into getting all this material together. So if it's okay, I'll just let him run through what we have and what we don't have and kind of the next steps. That might help you.
All right. Yes, excellent.
Thank you, Chet. Thank you, Gladys. Yeah, we do have the logos. Almost all of those logos were in-house, and then we did reach out to Capitol Trail Foundation, VDOT, a lot of the local trails or local logos that may be needed to be included in this effort. So we think we have all of them. We don't have if there was a different type of logo beyond the seal for each locality, we don't have those, but otherwise we should be good with in-house. Under all of the data collection section of the agenda, we have most of everything collected already. There is some discussion that may be needed among some of those items. I can certainly share all of that we have with you, outside of this meeting. But yeah, even down to the last item, which was our last item to collect, was all the buffer for the parcel map. So we've got all that data as well.
Right. Yeah. Excellent. So yes, that will help us get started. With the next steps. So basically, usually the next steps are to perform a visual and photographic survey. Sorry. So I don't know if that's something that would be useful in terms of if some parts are not built yet, we can work off the map and the information that we already have. And I don't think that we will be able to perform a complete visual and photographic survey. One other thing that I requested were the identifying primary and secondary destinations through the trail and from the trail and to the trail, anything outside that we want to mark to direct people from the trail to different destinations or from different destinations to the trail. So that's some information that we need. Typically, it's very useful to know the legal names of the destinations because sometimes there's a name that could be very lengthy that we need to start negotiating abbreviations because there are certain regulations for exterior signage in terms of the height of the copy, in terms of the visual contrast, many things that it's useful for us to know, to have a list, to know what's the longest name. And usually we use that worst case scenario to give dimensions to the signs. So then we will discuss the intended location of the signs, the content, the nomenclature. We need to be clear on if something has an official name, but then it has a name that people are used to call it, which one do we use, which one gives better information. And then, we develop a strategy for wayfinding based on those preliminary destinations. Usually, you don't want to have more than 3-4 lines on a directional sign. So if there are several things that need to be listed on the sign, what is the priority? Do we need to provide vehicular signs to parking lots on the trailheads, on intermediate points that have access? So those are other considerations: vehicular sign involved, pedestrian signs. So the next step after we collect all the information and think about all these questions is to present, design options, preliminary design options for the look and the feel of the signs, the materials, the heights. So basically, those are the next steps that we are envisioning taking here. And probably the next step will be, as I said, the next meeting will be related to the preliminary design of the sign elements of the system. So I don't know if there are any other questions, input, things that will be useful for me to know, to take into account. I envision this kickoff meeting as a very informal meeting where people say what they expect, what they wish, what they think. The more input we can get, the better we are positioned to provide a design that is according to the expectations.
Yeah, thanks, Gladys. I did want to note that there's a fair amount of chatter in the chat. Everybody who has this call should have access to the chat afterwards, so we can go back and review that. And there's been some good ideas shared there. I think that in terms of the data collection, I would suggest that Phil continues to take the lead on that, and just for everybody else on the call, be prepared for him to reach out to you, because there is going to be some locality specific information that might be easier for you to provide than for us to continue to dig for. And we can hopefully get that list compiled fairly soon, so that Gladys and her team can continue to move forward. I did see, so somebody just raised their hand. Brantley, is that you?
Yeah, and if it's not a good time, I'm happy to. I don't want to speak out of turn, but since I was recognized, it occurs to me that the thought of including the locality seals as the way to celebrate or identify when you're changing different, or you're transitioning from one to the other, is itself like a visual and branding choice. And I think there are other ways to do it too. I'm not saying that a seal is not the best way to identify when you transition from the city into Chesterfield or vice versa, but there are other ways to do it too. And I wonder what other kind of visual exploration there could be to identify the locality names or where you are. And the color is of course one of the ways we've already identified. But is there, are we stuck using the seals? Is that like a local government preference, or are there other ways to take a more modern view to what that trail experience would look like?
Yes, I mean, I don't think it's we need to use the seals. It's a choice. For me, it's interesting to have the seals to see if we can pick up some particular colors of the locality that are used in other materials. So if we were going to compose a color system for the different localities, maybe there's a seal that has predominantly orange or red and blue or green. So that's why it's useful for us to have those elements. We could identify the localities with symbols as well. For example, in the Appomattox River Trail, we developed a symbol for Petersburg that was like the skyline of the city. So there are a lot of different options design-wise to identify different localities. So no, we are not stuck with the seals, so to speak. It's, all these elements are useful for us to see what is the look of the seal, what does it represent. Maybe we can take an element of the seal and stylize it and have it represent that section of the trail. So yes, to answer the question, we can explore many different ways to do that.
Great. Anybody else have comments, questions? I know that one thing we were hoping to do, Gladys, is work with sports backers, because they're doing a vision plan concurrently and have done some work to identify destinations that stakeholders would like to access. So that may be a good start to finding that. And Brantley and Phil have already talked about possibly getting that list at some point.
All right.
Okay.
Very well.
Anybody else? We're making good time. We're not even to an hour yet. Okay, I think in terms, I don't hear any other comments or questions in terms of a next meeting. We can, I think probably the best step is to see where we are with the data collection and how long it takes us to put that together. And then Phil and I can work with Gladys to come up with probably maybe a target week and send out some like a poll to see what day works best. As long as everybody's okay with it, I think the virtual format probably is the most convenient and probably gets the best attendance. So especially through the summer, we'll probably stick to that.
Yes, I think it's useful. I can always share the designs by sharing the screen. So if you have a nice big monitor that you can use, it's usually the best way to do it. So.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we're probably close to the end. Anybody, one last chance. Anybody else have any comments or questions? All right. Gladys, do you have any closing remarks?
Well, I'm really excited to be working on this project, as I said before, and I think it's a partnership. If we want to make the deadline of August or September, it's very important to respond and to provide feedback in a timely manner. And I know it's the summer and some people may be out on vacation and things like that, but please be mindful if you are going to be out, to choose somebody to represent you so we can move the process along as fast as we can.
Great advice. And I think there's actually some people on the call today that are calling from vacation. So we're a committed group.
Very well. Thank you so much for.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.